اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا سبحانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة. قلت وعليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبدا من الله. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فما كانت إلا سعادة وإذا بولد الحسن ودخل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه وقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة أفؤادي. فقال يا أمه إني شم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذنني أن أدخل معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي. قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وما كانت إلا سعادة وإذا بولد الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. قلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة أفؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عنك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك جدا والسلام عليك يا من اختاره الله. أتأذنني أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافي أمتي. قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. قلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عنك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة وصل عن عمي رسول الله. وقلت نعم ها هو ما لديك تحت الكتاب. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. أتأذنني أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي. قد أذنت لك فدخل عليا تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله. أتأذنني أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي. قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلم يقتمنا جميعا تحت الكساء. أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيد اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن أحد بيتي وقاتتي وحانتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي. يؤلم لي ما يؤلمهم ويحزن لي ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وذل لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني ولعن صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم عنكم وردت وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد ومحمد.
وقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إنما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيعا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكتاب. وقال أمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكتاب. وقال عز وجل أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها.
صل على محمد.
فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذنني أن أحبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا. فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك فأبت الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يطلق السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت السماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيعا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذنوني يا رسول الله. وقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمير وحي الله إنه قد أذنت لك فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكتاب. فقال النبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل بيتي ويطهركم تطهيرا.
صل على محمد.
فقال عن النبي يا رسول الله أخبرني من أحد تحت الكساء من الخلق عند الله. قال النبي من حق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نبيا ما ذكر قبرنا ما في محفل من محافل أحلام وفيه جمع من جهدنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت فيهم وملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلا أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي رضا الله كذا وقال اشهدنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا يا علي والذي بعدني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نبيا ما ذكر قبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من جهتنا ومحبين وفيه محموم الله وفرج الله غما ولا مقوم إلا وكشف الله غما ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي رضا الله يبغضنا وسعدنا وإذا نكشياتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
صل على محمد.
Same book has two items. Or you can have the phone. What if you? For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Shoes, tarba, shoes. Shoes.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وقد على كل شيء وذللها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل عصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرا وأن تلهمني ذكرا اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا اللهم أسألك سؤال من اشتدت طاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجتا وعظم فيما عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانه وعلى مكانه وخفي مكروه وظهر أمره وغلب قهره وجرت قدرته ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومته. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقضائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عمل القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرا. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاتح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عسار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من صناع جميل لست أحلا له نشأته. اللهم عدو بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومثالي يا سيدي فأسأله وبعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل أحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيره أسأل كشف ضري والنذر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت في هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما هو وأسعد على ذلك القضاء وتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاء وألزمني حكمك وبلاء وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مزعنا معترفا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وساقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدع خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي أبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من توى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك وأعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضع لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تزيع من ربيت أو تحبد من عدنيت أو تشرد من عاويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارها سعت إلى أوتان تعبدك طاعيا وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكتوب يسير بقاء قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الغافل وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن نحله لأنه لا يكون إلا غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي بأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها ضج وأبكي بعليم العذاب
والشدة أم لطول البلاء ورحمتك. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائي وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائي وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وحبني. صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي أخلق فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لازجن إليك بين أحياء زجيج العاملين ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولا أنادينك حين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتك وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيتك وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج معمل لرحمته ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيده ويتوسل إليك بربوبيته. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمه. أم كيف تعلمهم النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمته. أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه. أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفها. أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقها. أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربها. أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها. هيهات مع ذلك الظن به ولا المعروف من فضله ولا مشبع لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدي. وخزيتني من إخلاد معاندي لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لعهد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماء أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناء قلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالعنوان متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حكمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في حازع الليلة وفي حازع الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أشررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة عملت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم وشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أوفيت بفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رزقي يا من بيدي ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معبدي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المغادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وخافك المخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فعليه ومن كادني فكيه واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عنده وأقربهم منزلة منه وخصهم غرفة لديه فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضله وجدني بجوده وعاطف علي بمجده واحفظني برحمته واجعل لساني بذكرك لحجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أسرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم العجابة فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من راس ماله الرجاء وسلاه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم تسليما كثيرا صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد जो है आसमान में सो जाऊं मैं भी कब्र शहे तशना हसरत नहीं कुछ और मैं अब जी के क्या करूं जी के क्या करूं असगर सिधारे सामने नजरों के आपकी तोड़ा है दम सकीना ने गोदी में आपकी झोली में कुछ रहा नहीं बीबी रबाब की ये आ गया है दौर मैं अब जी के क्या करूं जी के क्या करूं जिससे था जिंदगी में उजाला चला गया 6 माह जिसको गोद में पाला चला गया बीबी हमारा हंसलियों वाला चला गया क्या रह गया और मैं अब जी के क्या करूं जी के क्या करूं मांगेगी मुझसे फातिमा सुगरा जो भाई को दूंगी जवाब क्या मैं भला गम सताई को क्या मुंह दिखाऊं अहमदे मुरसल की जाए को जीने के हैं ये तौर मैं अब जी के क्या करूं जी के क्या करूं शौहर है मेरे साथ ना बेटा है पास में देखूं मैं किसकी राह जीऊं किसकी आस में क्या रह गया है जिस्म की वो सीधा साफ में मैं जी चुकी बस और मैं अब जी के क्या करूं जी के क्या करूं बेवा हसन की कुबरसी बेटी उजड़ गई औरों का क्या दाप की गोदी उजड़ गई, ज़हरा का घर बतूल की खेती उजड़ गई, खुद तो जिए मगर मैं अब जी के क्या करूं, जी के क्या करूं। बर मोहम्मद अली बैत मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु as you know, Maulana Hamza Fadaga was supposed to recite this majlis, but he was not feeling well. So Maulana, we are having Maulana Muhibbullah doing speech live from Austin, and I was just told that the speech just started. So inshallah, alhamdulillah, because also has done a wonderful job, so we'll start with the speech, then go watch and miss out on the speech, inshallah. Baba Jibulan Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Bismillah. We'll start the speech, otherwise we'll miss out the speech.
And for the hastened reappearance of Imam Zaman, another loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكري وسببا للمزيد من فضلي ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First and foremost, I give my condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Zaman, on the shahadat of his father, Imam Hasan al-Askari, alayhi salam. And then I give condolences to all of you, mu'min, mu'minat, on this sad occasion which we are commemorating the shahadat of our 11th Imam, alayhi salatu wassalam. This Imam, Imam Hasan al-Askari, alayhi salatu wassalam, as we mentioned before, he plays a very important role. Of course, all of our Imams play very important roles in our lives, or at least in our direction in life and how we live this life on this world. But Imam Hassan al-Askari, alayhi in particular, one of the things that is pointed out often by many of our scholars is that one of the responsibilities, and as we know, that the imamate of Imam Hassan al-Askari was very short. Again, even his life was very short, at the age of 28 that he was martyred. But for that 6 years that he was the imam, meaning he held that station of imamate, he was preparing the ummah. He was preparing us for that period in which we would face thereafter. And that is the ghaybat of Imam Zaman Ajal Farajul Sharif. One aspect, and so it behooves us to really study Imam Hassan al-Askari, to study not only his life, his lifestyle, how he lived his life, what he did in his life, and also the gems that he left behind for us, the beautiful words and statements. And inshallah, I'll mention the wasiyat of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi to his Shia. Again, the wasiyah is the part of the will that quite often when passes away, they leave what is called the wasiyah. So there are two parts of this kind of will, or we consider it a will in English, but in the context of Arabic, there are two parts of it. One is that part where all of the wealth or whatever is designated to the heirs. Then the other part of it is the wasiyah, and this is the advice that we find that one who is passing away gives to those who is leaving behind. And quite often the imams, you will see that there's always a wasiyah from one imam to the next imam. But at times as well, we find that the imams are giving a wasiyah to their Shia, and this is what I want to kind of go over, the wasiyah of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi to his Shia. Why? Because it is important for us to understand that he is preparing the ummah. How should we live in this time of ghaiba? But before I begin that, I want to explain a little bit about his life, because this wasiyah also, it connects with his life. And in fact, a very interesting and very important aspect of the life of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam. And it can be expressed in verse 91 of Surah Yusuf. And this is what I recited in the beginning, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brings up this discourse or this dialogue between Yusuf and his brothers. That, of course, this is after his brothers, they discover that, oh, Yusuf, he's now one of the emirs of Egypt. And at this point, they realize that, oh, this is Yusuf, and here's his brother Binyamin. And yes, we tried to deceive Yusuf, we tried to trick him, and then also something happened with his brother as well. Then those 12 brothers of Yusuf, they said, qalu, as Allah says, they said, what did I say? Tallahi, laqad atharaka Allahu alayna, wa in kunna la khati'in. So they stated that we swear by Allah, tallah. لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a very interesting way it's translated as well, because it doesn't give you the full meaning. آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Some translate it as that, oh, Allah has chosen you over us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you preference over us. And in one translation, it kind of comes a little bit close to the actual meaning in Arabic. And that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you superiority over us. But if we really want to know this meaning in Arabic, athara or athar means to affect. So what they're saying, laqad or tallahi, laqad atharaka Allahu alayna. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, yes, superiority in a sense, but what type of superiority? What type of choice or position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Yusuf over his brothers? Laqad atharaka alayna, to affect them. Or, as we would say today, to influence them. In other words, Yusuf, he was a type of influencer. Again, today, many people, if you're on social media, that's what it's all about. Who are the influencers? So the brothers of Yusuf, and they're giving the reason for this, or basically every influencer, they have a niche. What is their niche? They have something that, somebody else doesn't talk about this. But if you want to look at true influence and the niche or the position that a person should have in order to have influence over others, it should be grounded and connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the brothers of Yusuf are saying to Yusuf. لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Yes, they made a mistake, as they mentioned at the end of this verse. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. That we went this way, we went that way, we tried to trick you, we tried to trick our father, we put you in this, in the well, and we said you were killed because we didn't want to deal with you. But in the end, because Yusuf, ala nabiyyina wa alihi alayhi salam, he stayed on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ عَلَيْنَا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you influence over us. That we were trying to influence our father and dissuade our father for having love, that love that he had for Yusuf. And again, this is because Yaqub realized that the Nabuwah and prophethood would be with Yusuf. But they wanted to be influencers. They wanted to dissuade people another way. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, that individual whose path is Tawheed, La ilaha illallah, then that individual will have the greatest influence. Now, if we look today, and it's kind of interesting, and I'll say this because everyone wants to be guided in some way. And that's what influencers are doing. They're guiding people this way or that way. And perhaps, it's maybe interesting, maybe just ironic that the top influencer now is Huda Beauty. Social media say, oh, Huda Beauty is actually number one. And Huda, of course, means guidance. The woman who did this, she made this beauty product and talks about beauty, and she called it Huda Beauty. Again, it shows that perhaps deep down, everyone wants to be guided somewhere. Everyone wants to have guidance in a direction. And of course, her guidance is towards physical beauty, which is, mashallah, it's not bad. And we find also in the riwayat that, yes, a woman should look beautiful for her husband, a husband should look beautiful for his wife. This is good. But that beauty is only surface. And that influence will only go for so long. But the true beauty, if we gain true beauty, that true element of influence, it won't last simply the lifetime of a person, that it will go even beyond that. And that's what we find in the Sirat of Imam Hasan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, as we see that Shaykh Mutahari, in one of his discussions about the 11th Imam, he explains that how Imam Hasan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam is that he was very influential. And he attributes this influence that he had over others to two things. One, he says that whenever the Imam, he was in presence or he came in front of someone, he said immediately people, they were influenced by him. Immediately they were drawn to his personality. That was one thing. And this is without him even saying a thing. He just simply was in their presence. And so he drew people towards him. The second thing, he says that then when the Imam, he spoke, he says, when the Imam spoke, again, this was another thing that drew people towards him. And this is something that is real, something that can happen. And I'll give you an example, which is even closer to our time. But nonetheless, what is that? Again, that thing which the Imam had, that aura that the Imam had, Imam Hasan al-Askari, that it drew people towards him. And it is a beauty. But that beauty was not simply a physical beauty, but that beauty was a beauty of Iman and Taqwa. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he states, and he says, وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. And the dress of Taqwa, the garment of Taqwa, that garment of God consciousness, that person who is conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by their sheer presence, it will affect others. And this is what Imam Hasan al-Askari said. Quite often, and if you read the life history or the biography of Imam Khomeini. He said that he also had that. In fact, even one of the American journalists, he said that when he went in his presence to do an interview, he says immediately he was drawn to Imam Khomeini. Immediately. He says he doesn't know what it is, and he's never been in the presence of anyone that pulled them towards him without even saying anything, just simply being in the same room. And this is because of, again, that God consciousness, that taqwa. And we see that this is one of the things that in the wasiyah, actually the first thing that Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam advises to his Shia, ittaqullah, have taqwa. Why? Because that God consciousness, not only will it connect you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, it will give you the best mindset, but when you are present in front of others, they will be drawn towards you. You will become, again, the best influencer, but an influencer in a good way and towards something that is positive, towards something that is beneficial for a person, for humanity, for their mind, body, and soul, for the hereafter, for this world. Khairu dunya wal akhirah. And of course, when one speaks as Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam spoke, again, that will be another aspect of influence. Imam Hassan Askari, just to give you an example, and we'll speak about this, that where do we see this in the life of Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam? One is that many of you have heard the stories that how Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam, that when he was imprisoned and he was being taken from prison to prison, that some of the individuals who were there to guard him, because again, there was no industrial prison like we have today, that, people, they are making money off of putting people in prison. No, this imprisonment was, again, to contain a person, especially someone who the governments at that time, they thought that, oh, well, this person is someone who will, again, bring us down, or someone who will, again, have an influence over others, not in a negative way, in a good way, a positive way, that will counter their corruption. Because it was clear, very clear, that Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam was the 11th Imam, and not only were the Shia waiting the appearance and the birth of Imam Zaman Ajal Fardu Sharif, but even the Abbasids, they were waiting. They knew that, oh, well, this Imam will give birth to a son, and this son will be the one who establishes justice, will end our corruption. So much so that some of the state is described that, oh, this was definitely parallel to the time of Fir'aun. So yes, in the time of Fir'aun, they were killing the men and the babies, there were boys, and leaving the women alive. It says, but what was looking at, who are the women who are pregnant? Oh, who's this woman married to? What they were doing. So they were very suspicious of any woman who was married, and they were checking that, oh, well, who's this woman? Is she married? Who's her husband? Who's this person? So this is the state that Imam Hassan Askari alayhi wasallam was living in. Just to give you a little bit more of that, and this is also where the Imam, he gains his name, Al-Askari, because he was kept in in Samara, in an area that was called Al-Askari. It was basically a military compound. And Mu'tasim, the father of Mutawakkil, which would be the grandfather of Mu'tamid, of the murderer of Imam Hassan Askari. So Mu'tasim had moved his army to Samara and kept them on a compound. And the reason for this is because of the oppression of this military. Meaning that the people were complaining that how rough and how disrespectful the military was. And so it was creating problems. And in order to make sure that there's no uprising, that was happening against Mu'tasim. So he moved the military. So no, you stay here, you be in this one place. And then when we need to dispatch the military, we will dispatch the military from this place, from Al-Askari. And this was in order to keep the military from disrespecting and being harsh and brutal with the people. So this is the place where Imam Hassan Askari was being kept. And this is the state of the Ummah in that particular region. So Imam Hassan Askari, so we understand the influence of Imam Hassan Askari, his presence, and then also his speech. He influenced the like of Ibn al-Wasi. So we've heard some of the individuals. But Salih ibn al-Wasi, we haven't really heard like, okay, well, yeah, he influenced the prison guards and then they became his followers, but we never hear about these individuals. So I want to tell you about Salih ibn al-Wasi, that who is Salih ibn al-Wasi? So Salih ibn al-Wasi, his father was Wasi. And Salih ibn al-Wasi, he was, again, among the Turkish guards and military officers. So his father was kind of like the chief, or kind of rose to be a chief military officer. And this was during the time of, basically roughly during the time of Mutawakkil. He had a lot of position and power. If we know about what happens, so Mutawakkil, the son of Mu'tasim, and in Mutawakkil, what happened to Mutawakkil? Mutawakkil al-La'id, the one who had oppressed Imam al-Hadi alayhi wasallam, to the extent that Imam Hadi actually made dua against him, that ya Allah, that what Mutawakkil is doing. Again, Mutawakkil is one of those khulafa who actually even destroyed the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam. And so and he prevented people from making ziyarah to Imam Hussein. So Imam Hadi ended up making dua against Mutawakkil. So whatever happened, but Al-Wasi, and this is the father of Saleh. Al-Wasi was one of those individuals who bought into the plot of the son of Mutawakkil to actually murder and assassinate Mutawakkil, so that Mutawakkil's son can become the Khalifa. So this is the household that was Saleh, he was raised up in. And then when his father passed away, then Wasi, he rose up to be the head of his clan, to be the head of the Turks, and also to be, again, the chief officer, military officer. So the likes of this individual, that even the Abbasids, they were surprised, because again, he wasn't really cared about religion or these type of things too much. No, but his power, his position. And then he was one who was assigned to watch over Imam Hassan al-Askari. And the way he's described as a nasibi, as someone who is, and just not any nasibi, not someone who simply had hatred. He was the basically chief of the nawasib, who had hatred for Ahlul Bayt and who were against the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. It was to the point that when he was assigned to watch over Imam Hassan al-Askari, he was like, oh yes, this person, you just tell him to do anything, any oppression, and then he would do it. He won't even ask. Why? Because he hates the Ahlul Bayt and he hates the Shias that much. So the number one Nasibi. This is who Salih ibn Wasi is. And so this is why it's kind of important to understand this, that how was Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi wasallam an influencer? And it's not something that's easy. And again, most people say, oh, yeah, hey, oh, everyone needs beauty products. Oh, hey, everyone wants this. Everyone wants this. But how is it, and this is what some of our ulama describe, that a person, that either person have that type of effect on another person who has absolute hate for you and hate anyone who is around you, or anyone who follows, or anyone who associates with you. Change that person from being a hater to being one of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. So again, this simple, again, there are steps written, how to become an influencer. You can read the steps. But that only tells you how to do something that is, again, simple versus this. Versus someone who, again, has absolute hatred for you. And then when they interact with you, they become someone who is inspired and who loves you. I give one example also of the person that Imam Sajjad alayhi wasallam described. I assume I mentioned here, but I mentioned in other words, Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Shahab al-Zuhri. Al-Zuhri was one of those persons that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi wasallam drew towards him. But Zuhri wasn't considered a Nasir. He just worked for the Umayyads. But Salih ibn Wasi, he was known to the point that when he started to respect Imam Hassan al-Askari, the Abbasids got scared. They were like, what? So, this guy? After interacting with Imam Hassan al-Askari, and it's interesting the way the history records, they said that when Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi wasallam was placed under the watch of Salih ibn Wasi, how long was it? It was one day. Subhanallah. In one day, he had such an effect on Salih ibn Wasi. In one day, he changed this individual from being a hater to someone who respects Imam Hassan al-Askari. From someone who cared nothing for the deen, that where the Abbasid is described as like, whoa, after this one day, we see that this person that in his salat and his sawm and his fasting, because even, again, it's not Ramadan, but he's fasting. This guy never fasted outside of Ramadan. But now he's fasting, now he's praying, he's making salat. He says, what happened to this guy? Again, that influence only comes when one is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the brothers of Yusuf, they said, لَقَدْ تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Because of Allah, you've had this effect upon us. But one has to be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, that type of influence will radiate from the individual, even without speaking. As we see that Imam, that Sheikh Mutari, he mentioned about Imam Hassan al-Askari. So how does one gain such ability to influence? This is something that we find in the wasiyah, in the will of Imam Hassan al-Askari for his Shia. Why? Because this is important. When has it been the Shia, of course, with the exceptions of certain countries now, where the Shia are the majority? Even in the Askari, or that area, even in Samara, even to today, Shia not the majority. But then we find also sometimes some of our ulama as well, Shia ulama who lived in that area, also had this power of influence over others, where they were respected. That individuals, and we don't have time to go into any of the stories, but one of our ulama, we heard that, again, he was one of those individuals that everyone in that area, they respected. Whether they were followers of Ahlul Bayt or they weren't followers of Ahlul Bayt, they had utter respect for this mujtahid, whatever Maraja. So how do we gain this? Imam Hassan al-Askari in his wasiyah, he says, usikum. And this is something he wrote to his Shia, usikum. And he gives 7 things. He says, taqwallah, to be God conscious. The second thing that he says, al-wara' fi dinikum, to be humble in your deen. And I'll talk about these 2 first. We may not get through all of these things to explain, but inshallah on Saturday when we celebrate the imamate of Imam Zaman Ajafar Sharif, We'll continue that discussion on the Wasiyat of Imam Hassan Askari, because it's important, because the Imam is preparing us for the time of Imam Hassan Askari, Imam Zaman Ajurashi. So first thing, taqwallah, God consciousness. Second thing, al-wara'u fi dinikum, to be humble in your deen. The third thing is to al-ijtihad lillah, to be diligent and to strive towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fourth thing is sidqul hadith, to be truthful in one's statement, what one's saying in one's speech. The fifth thing is ada'ul amana, to be that person that if you're entrusted with someone, with something from someone, then you return that trust. You protect whatever you have been entrusted with, and you return it in the best of manners. And the Imam, he says in the hadith, he says, Libirrin wa fajirin. He says, it doesn't make a difference. If that person is righteous, is religious, he gives you money and trusts you with something, protect it and give that back to him. If that person is fajir, if that person is corrupt, but he or she entrusted you with something, then you make sure that you do ada'ul amana. It's been entrusted to you. So be a trustworthy person. The sixth thing, the Imam says, tulus sujud, to prolong your prostration. And this is something that, again, all of those individuals, when they looked in on the Imam, they would see that him making sajda for a long time. Even one of the prison guards, at one point, he thought that the Imam had left and there's only a blanket on the floor. He opened up to see, and he saw that, no, it's the Imam in sajda, and all he sees was the cloak of the Imam over him. So tulus sujud. And perhaps, and this is often what we see in the words of the Imam, how the words and their statements sometimes give commentary of one another. The first thing that Imam, he started is what? Ittaqullah, taqwa. One of the things that will help you in your taqwa, tulus sujud, to be in prostration, a state of absolute submission, or at least symbolize absolute submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The seventh thing that the Imam, he gave in his wasiyah, he says, husnul jiwar, to be neighborly, to be a good neighbor. Again, Imam, he's giving this advice to his Shia, that what? Who are minority? Who are they surrounded by? That the Imam, he says that if you want to make the Imam happy, and the Imam, he eventually says this, that if you do these things and you live up to this quality and this way of life, he says, yusirrani, it will make me happy, إِذَا قِيلَ هَذَا شِيَعَتِي. If someone says, oh, this is the Shia of Imam Hassan al-Askari. This is the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. So the Imam, he's not just simply giving this wasiyah, he's telling us, on one hand, that thing that which will connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if we're connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that way, as the brothers of Yusuf said about Yusuf, لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this ability or this power of influence. لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. First thing. Second thing, it will please the Imam. That when someone sees that, oh, this person has these things, taqwa, God consciousness, they're humble in their deen, that these individuals are the most trustworthy individuals, these are the most truthful individuals in their speech, these individuals, that they are those who strive to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-ijtihadu lillah, then that person says, oh, this is the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Imam says, this will please me. So let me go and explain just I think we'll only have time for these first two things that the Imam, he gives a wasiyah for. And the wasiyah, it continues, he begins to talk about these attributes and these qualities. But as they kind of relate and link to one another, ittaqullah, taqwallah, to be God conscious. And we talked about this a lot. So God consciousness is to be aware of your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be again, in that state that you don't want to sever that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and always hopeful that that connection will remain firm and strong. First is to have that, again, tulu sujud, to extend our prostration. Doesn't necessarily mean in our salat as well. That even at times, right before we get ready to go to bed, go to sleep, again, prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be in that state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right before that moment of laying to go to sleep, to increase our taqwa. Imam, he also mentions this taqwa later, which I'll explain, but I want to go to this second part. Al-wara'u fi dinikum. Because wara also sometimes is translated as piety, as taqwa. But there's a difference between this taqwa, the state between fear and hope, fear of severing that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and hope that you will maintain that connection. Al-wara' fi dinikum. To be humble. This is perhaps a better way to translate. To be humble in one's deen. What does this mean? Of course, we all claim, and everyone else, they make their own claim as well. That, oh, well, this is the way of truth. This is the way of haqq. But a person who has this wara, and Imam, he explains this, has this wara in their deen, although they know they're on truth and others may be on different paths, they don't take it as a point of pride over others, of being mutakabbir. Oh, I'm on the path of truth. So therefore, I'm not going to talk to you, or the way I talk to you, I'm going to talk to you in a derogatory manner. Now that person who has al-wara fi deen, who's humble in their deen, again, they know they're on a path of truth. They're on that path of haqq, but they don't take it as a point of pride over others. Why? Because if they are taking it as a point of pride over others, again, they won't have that influence. They won't have that point of tharakallahu alayna. Why is that? Because again, we see this quite often. A person thinks, and in English we call it a person who is more righteous than thou. More righteous than, oh, I'm this, oh, hey, I spent this long studying, oh, hey, I spent this long praying or this much fasting. And who are you to talk to me? No, that person who has wara fi deen, again, yes, they could be fasting more than the other, have more knowledge than the other, have more piety than the other, but they don't use that as a point that, oh, this makes me superior to you. But they take it as a point that, oh, well, hey, maybe I have something to offer you, to help you. And here it is. If you take it, then mashallah. If you don't, then okay, I'll continue on my path. And this is what we see the imams as doing. Yes, they do not sway on their position from truth or haqq, even if, again, their lives depend on it. Yes, okay, then you'll martyr me, you'll martyr me. But I'm not going to use this to oppress or pounce on someone's head. No, this is truth, this is haqq, and I offer it in the best of manners. Sidqul hadith. And we understand this as the Imam, he not only talks about the concept of taqwa later on, but also husnul jawar, because this goes hand in hand with this concept of al-wara fi dinikum. And how is that? The Imam tells us, he says, look, all of these things, these 7 things that he has left in his wasiyah, he says, this is what the Prophet came with. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, if we examine the life of the Prophet, we'll see that he had the same thing. Yeah, although he was the final Prophet, Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had the final revelation. When did he hold this over the heads of any of the Christian, Jews, or even polytheists? He says, no, I'm calling you to a path of truth. Accept. Why? Because it's going to be better for your dunya and akhirah. If you don't accept, then I'm going to continue establishing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to establish. And then they're trying to attack the Prophet. Why? Because of this haqq, this truth. So husn al-jiwar, and this is interesting. Again, remember that the Shias are in a minority at that time, just as many of us are today. He says, Sallu fi asha'irihim. How do we be the best neighbors? Which shows our humility and our deen, that we're on a path of truth. And you know what? Nothing will deter me from this path of truth. Nothing will dissuade me from this path of truth. And at the same time, yes, I'm proud of being someone on this path of truth, but I'm not arrogant about it that I'm going to suppress others. So he says, Sallu fi asha'irihim. He says, pray with them, pray with your neighbors. Pray with those who are around you. He didn't say, hey, pray with our Shia only. He says, no, pray with those who are around you. Washhadu jana'izahum. He says, and when someone dies among them, then, okay, do the tashdiyul janazah. Make sure that, again, the burial rites are observed. Wa'udu maradahum. And if someone becomes sick, then visit their sick ones. Wa'addu huquqahum. And if they have rights, make sure that you observe their rights. They may not be observing your rights, but make sure that you observe their rights. It's kind of interesting as well that one of those points they said, oh, hey, when you want to influence someone, it says that you make sure that whatever someone needs, you make sure you take care of their needs, even if they're not taking care of your needs. So this is even before this idea concept, oh, hey, how to become an influencer even became popular. But this is just common respect and courtesy. This is the path of truth. When the Jewish woman kept throwing trash on the head of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bring me the account of that. When did he ever make any negative or derogatory statement about her? Someone says something about us and whoosh, we're ready to fight. We're ready to go to blows. Someone spits in our face. When did Imam Ali, when did he take care of Amr Abdul Wud? Oh, he spat in my face. Something that, again, a great deal of disrespect. Imam Ali says, no, you know, I don't want to do what I have to do out of my own anger. This is for the sake of Allah. Oh, you're throwing trash on my head. Then one day you stop. Hey, what has happened? This is what Rasulullah. He goes and he visits. Oh, she's ill. Okay, hey, you need some things. Let me bring what you need. And seeing this character from Rasulullah, this woman, this Jewish woman who was once throwing trash on the head of Rasulullah, said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu annaka Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Hasan al-Askari, he said, listen, this is what the Prophet came with. This is what the Imam is teaching. This is what we have to do in this time of ghaiba. That's husn al-jiwar. You interact with your neighbor. You make sure that their rights are being observed, even if they're not observing your rights. With regards to taqwa, well, in here, the Imam, he says, ittaqullah wa kunu zaynan wa la takunu shaynan. But what is this taqwa and what does it look like? What does this God consciousness look like practically? He says, reflecting or kind of almost parallel to the words of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, where he says, Kunu zaynan lana, Kunu zaynan lana, wa la takunu shaynan lana. Be an ornament of beauty for Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Zayn, and be that point of attraction. Wa la takunu shaynan. And do not be that ornament of shame and disrespect, or in other words, that, again, that cloud of negativity, that you're not attracting people towards truth and haqq, you are repelling people from truth and haqq. And the Imam, he becomes very clear about this. He says, after he says that, he says, Jarru ilayna kulla mawaddatin wadfa'u anna kulla qabih. He says that, what? Jarru ilayna kulla mawadda. He says, attract towards us and pull towards us kulla mawadda. Everything which is lovable, respectable. And how can you do that if you are yourself, if you're negative and you're emanating negativity? You can't. Even an individual like Salih ibn Wasi, who's just full of negativity. He's a Nasibi. And of course, many of us, we will read yes, the Nasibi is like this. And here are hadith. Oh, Nasibi, if, that person is doomed, that person is cursed. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that there's no reward for this final revelation illa mawaddata fil qurba. And the Nasibi rejects this. The interesting thing about it, if we actually do our due diligence and we look in the books of the Ahlul Sunnah, they say, yes, the love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad is incumbent. Allah mentions it in the Quran. Their understanding and concept and perception of it is definitely different from our love, our hub, and our mawaddah for Ahlul Bayt. It's definitely different. It's not at the same level. So we shouldn't confuse them with a Nasibi. A Nasibi has no love. One example of this idea of someone being a Nasibi, we see that when the curse of Imam Ali alayhi wasallam, that people were being paid to curse Imam Ali alayhi from the minbar. Yes, this person is Nasibi. Allah says, "La as'alukum alayhi ajran illa mawaddata fil qurba." And there's no connection between love and cursing Imam Ali. So much so that, just so you understand that, what is this level of Nasibi? So, that's so much so, there was a masjid, again, this is a masjid of Dharar, one of those masjids that Allah says in the Quran, don't go and pray in it. There was one masjid that where the Imam who was making, and this is a long time ago, who was making the Jum'ah, he forgot to curse Imam Ali in the khutbah. So as he left from the masjid from that Friday, he walked a few steps and he said, "Oh, I forgot, now I remembered." So then he started gathering some rocks and he started putting it around. And someone asked him what he's doing. He says, I'm building a masjid. And I'm going to call this masjid Masjidul Dhikr. Eventually a masjid was built there. But what is the story of this Masjidul Dhikr? He says, in this place, I remembered that I didn't curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they made a masjid of it. This is nawasib. This is someone that, again, defies the ayat of Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there is no reward for this. Illa mawaddata fil qurba. And there's no doubt that mawadda fil qurba extends to Imam Ali alayhi wasallam. Imam Hasan al-Askari, again, he's giving us this, and we'll speak about this a little more in our celebration of the Imamat of Imam Zaman Ajal Faraj al-Shiri. But the Imam, he's giving us this way of life, this path. Not only it will connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will please the Ahlul Bayt, but a way and a method of living and practicing the teachings of the Quran and practicing the teachings of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad that will bring everyone into the folds of this love of Ahlul Bayt the way they should. As Imam, he says, Jarru ilayna kulla mawaddah. Pull towards us. Wadfa or wadfa'u anna kulla qibi, and everything which is negative, which is wrong, repel this from us. Living in this way that even a Nasibi like Salih ibn Wasi, that he will be pulled towards the Imam. To the point that Salih ibn Wasi, he actually began to rise up against the Abbasid government, rose up against Mu'taz al-Abbasi. And he saw the haqq and truth in Imam Hasan al-Askari, and then he looked at, these are the people who put this individual under my care, and I saw nothing from him illa al-haq, but nothing but truth. Nothing but connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it came a time that Salih ibn Awasi, he rose up against the Abbasid government, Mu'taz al-Abbasi, who he once worked for. And then he was assassinated roughly about 4 years before Imam Hasan al-Askari was martyred. So by the time Imam Hasan al-Askari was martyred, Mu'taz had died, and his brother Mu'tamid had now become the Khalifa. But it was this power of influence towards right, towards truth, towards haqq, that Mu'tamid, he was afraid of. Again, they were waiting, they were saying that, oh, we know that Imam Zaman, that his son will rise, his son will establish truth and haqq and do away with batil, but the Imam himself, his presence, his being, that when people see him, or even if they hear him speak, that they begin to understand and to be able to distinguish between haqq and batil, that he is on haqq and we are on batil, that we are on falsehood. So Mu'tamid also, he had Imam Hasan al-Askari imprisoned, isolated, to the point they said that even the prison that he was in, that it was not even clear that whether it was night or day. This was the state of the dungeon. And then, as the Maqtal, it writes, Imam Hasan al-Askari ko Mu'tamid ke hukm se zahra diya gaya. That Mu'tamid, he ordered the assassination of Imam Hasan al-Askari with poison. They said the Imam, when he had this poison, for some days he was in pain. Jab maut qareeb aayi, Hazrat ki bimari ke aakhiri chand gante, Imam Hasan nahi kah sakte the. Apne ghulam se farmaya, तुम फलान कमरे में चले जाओ, वहां एक बच्चा नजर आएगा या Imam Zaman था, ये बच्चे Imam Zaman था. They said that Imam Hasan al-Askari, as death drew near, thirst was pressing upon him. And the servant of Imam Hasan al-Askari, he's narrating this. So he told the servant to go to another room, but out of nowhere, a young boy appeared. This young boy was Imam Zaman. Hazrat ne kaha, mera paas le aao. जब वो बच्चे इमाम हसन के पास आया और इमाम हसन की नजर उस पर पड़ी, जो आप रोने लगे और फरमाया that Imam Hasan al-Askari, he called this young boy to his side. He says, come near. That he wanted to have his son with him in those final moments of his life. That look how lucky Imam Hasan al-Askari is, that Imam is Zaman, that he will come to him in these final moments of his death, the final moments of his life, just to give his father some water. But look at Imam Hussein, as he laid on the plains of Karbala, that there was no one that he could call to give him water. Even the enemy, when he asked him, he says, I know that you're going to slaughter me, but give me some water. They would not give Imam water. That the Imam, he said in these final moments to Imam Zaman, Ya Sayyid Ahl Bayti, يا سيد أهل بيتي اسقني الماء فإني ذاهب إلى ربي. He calls this young boy, he calls Imam Zaman, the master of the house. He's letting Imam Zaman know that these are his final moments. And from this day moving forward, you're the master of this house. You're the master of the Ahl Bayt. Oh, master of this house, bring water for your father. Al-Yawm. This is a day. This is a day of the wafat. This is a day of the shahadat of Imam Hassan al-Askari. Al-Yawm al-Askari. وغاب عن أشيائه غوث الورى وعسامها. اليوم مات الأوصياء وختامها قد غيبته عن العيون لآمها. On this moment, in this moment, as Imam Hassan al-Askari, he is breathing his last breath, he is turning back to Allah. There are two calamities, there are two tragedies. One is the death of Imam Hassan al-Askari. The other one is that the ghaybat of Imam Zaman, that the ghaybat of Imam Zaman will begin, that we have lost two Imams, one to death, one to martyrdom, the other one to ghayba because of the enemies who want to kill the Imam. Al-yawm na'zi Mawlana Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman Azzam Allahu ajuraka ya Mawlaya ya Imam Zaman عظم الله أجوركم يا شيعة أهل بيت محمد. Today we are mourning for Imam Zaman. We give our condolences to Imam Zaman on this day, that this is the day of the shahadat of his father. We give him our condolences. Amshab Shabi Shahadatas Samara Darul Azashud Jan Zahra Jan Fida Shud Hujjat ibn al Hasan Daghiba Bashud Dara Azay Pedarat Ashketu Shud Ravan Tasliyat ya Imam Zaman Tasliyat ya Sahib al-Zaman. On this night we give our condolence for the Imam of our time who was mourning, and at that time he was only a 6-year-old son. He was a 6-year-old boy who was mourning, that we know of a young child also who mourned for her father in Karbala. What type of pain does a young child go through as they mourn for their father? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس العسكري اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل عجل عجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنسيه وتحت لوائه حق محمد وآله الطاهرين. معتمد.
आज मजलिस में सब है खुले सर, है शहादत हसन अस्करी की। इसमें सब है खुले सर, है शहादत हसन अस्करी की। खुद इमाम ज़माना है मुज़तर, है शहादत
हसन अस्करी ताक उड़ाती है तुर्बत में ज़हरा जानशीन नखी मेरा होता ज़हर से तुझे जालिमों का हसन था निशाना रो रहे हैं इमाम ज़माना गमज़दा है अली और पैगंबर है शहादत हसन अस्करी लीजिए मोमिनों का भी पुरसा करते हैं 2 महीने से गिरिया लीजिए मोमिनों का भी पुरसा हक अदा हो ठिकाना बराबर या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी भेजिए बेटे को मौला भेजिए बेटे को मौला मुंतज़िर है मातमी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम दास्ताने ज़ुल्म मौला अब जहाँ से खत्म हो जब तलक मेरी ना आए रोक दीजिए वक्त को अल अजल के गुजरती जा रही है हर सदी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी जालिमों ने ज़हर मौला आपको ऐसा दिया दस्त पाके नाखूनों से खून जारी हो गया आपकी गुर्बत को देखा याद शायद आ गई या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी पास अपने असग़र को किया आ गया नज़रों में आए मंज़र करबो बला अपनी गुर्बत या पे जो घर में खुद तैयार की या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी यूं तो सारा सामने था रोने वालों में मगर भाई भाई के कोई तेरी लाश पर एक बहन ज़ैनब की जैसी काश के होती तेरी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी घर में दाखिल हो गए थे जुल्म ढाने के लिए पुरसा देने के बजाय खत्म करने के लिए ढूंढते थे चारों जानब तेरे मेहदी को शकील या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी पर्दाए ग़ैरत में मेहदी भी तड़प कर गया 11 सदियों बाद ये फिर से सितम ढाया गया आपके रोज़े का गिरना ए शहादत दूसरी या इमाम अस्करी या इमाम अस्करी भेजिए बेटे को मौला मुंतज़िर है मातमी अलविदा हुसैन अलविदा 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 हुसैन अलविदा अलविदा हुसैन ये सदाए खुदा और ये मजलिस है ये सदाए खुदा और ये मजलिस है मातम नौहा और गम की ये ज़ीनत है मातम नौहा और ये ज़ीनत है चाहता है ये दिल यूं ही कायम रहे 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 आह भटका है दिल किस तरह से कहे अलविदा 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 मेरे मेहमान है आखिरी ये सलाम मेरे मेहमान है आखिरी ये सलाम तुझ पे कुर्बान है आखिरी ये सलाम तुझ पे कुर्बान है आखिरी ये सलाम शाहिदी शान 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 है आखिरी ये सलाम दिल है दीवार है आखिरी ये सलाम अलविदा 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 दे हो गई हो जो कोई खता
बख्श दे हो गई हो जो कोई खता
आगे खिदमत ना हमसे अदा हो सका
हक़ खिदमत ना हमसे अदा हो सका
गम यही है ना जी भर के मातम किया
हम यही है नदी भर के मातम किया
गम यही है ना जी भर के मातम किया
हम यही है नदी भर के मातम किया
तेरी खातिर ना क्यों अपना सर दे दिया
अलविदा 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 अलविदा
घर जिए साल भर फिर करेंगे ये काम
ये साल भर फिर करेंगे ये काम
रोएंगे फिर तेरे गम में मिलकर बहार
रोएंगे फिर
तेरे गम में मिलकर बहार और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा अलाम
और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा
और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा अलाम
और अगर मर गए तो ये होगा
आई अफसोस की भर के रोए ना
अलविदा 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 अलविदा
अलविदा
अलविदा हुसैन हुसैन अलविदा
अलविदा शहे मशरक़ैन अलविदा
अलविदा अलविदा
बिन्ते अहमद के नूरैन 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 अलविदा
है मुजाहिद के ज़फ़र ये मैन अलविदा
अलविदा अलविदा अलविदा अलविदा अलविदा अलविदा
सादिक कत्ल शाह कहते थे हराम
सादिक कत्ल शाह कहते थे हराम
सादिक कत्ल शाह कहते थे हराम
सादिक कत्ल शाह कहते थे
कहते थे हराम
सादिक कत्ल शाह कहते थे वाह मोहम्मद खुश शुरू है वाह मोहम्मद खुश शुरू है
बेरिदा हुई अली की लाडली
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 वाह मोहम्मद खुद शुरू है
वाह मोहम्मद खुश शुरू है
वाह मोहम्मद खुद शुरू है
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن المصطفى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي علت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى صحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا من قرن العباس أمير المؤمنين وقاسم بن الحسن ومسلم بن أخي وهاني بن عروة وحبيب بن مظاهر وور شهيد الرياحي. السلام عليكم جميع شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم أئمة المرسلين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى محمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان وشر الشيطان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا مظهر الإيمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك ودهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه وردك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. रब जा पंज तने पाक सल्ला इस कौम का दामन का में शफीर से भर दे बच्चों को तकर अयसर का तबस्सुम बूढ़ों को हबीब का मज़ाहिर की नजर दे कम से इनको मिलाए वल वलाए और मोहम्मद हर एक जवान को अली अकबर का जिक्र दे माँ को सिखा आसानी ज़हरा का खलीफा मैं की दुआओं का सर दे मौला तो जज़ानब की असीरी की कसम है बेटे मसीरों को रिहाई की खबर दे तो चौधरी ज़ैनब दार मौला महफूज है ऐसे ख़वातीन के पर्दे जो दीन के काम आए औलाद अदा कर जो मजलिस शब्बीर की खातिर हो कर दे मुफ्लिस फजलाल जवार के बारिश मखरूज का हर तरफ महब से कर दे हम कोई न दे हमको सिवाय गम शब्बीर हम कोई न दे हमको सिवाय गम शब्बीर शब्बीर का गम बांट रहा है तो इधर दे नारे हैदरी दुश्मनान शब्बीर तेरे पीर पे लानत.
What do we know the sponsors of today's majlis?